Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. Remember the Pod Bros Podcast Network. Don't forget to go to podbros.com and find yourself an episode or another podcast you want to listen to. And don't forget to check out our sponsors, Trap and Roll Soap Company and Tape Armor. Look, I don't know if you guys know who Jason Bircher is, but you're about to find out who Jason Bircher is. He's a very talented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and has a lot of really cool advice, stories, and just insight into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community that I really wanted to share with you all. You know, I wanted to really get his attitude out there, and I think he's probably one of the more fun people I've had on the show that I could talk to, so I really do hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Also, don't forget to go to bjjshow.com. We finally dropped the Jiu-Jitsu shirt, I guess is the best way to put it, in quotation marks. It just says Jiu-Jitsu shirt, so you guys don't have to worry about skulls or, you know, snap, nap, or tap, you know, t-shirts, and just the other weird jiu-jitsu t-shirts. Just keep it plain, right? That's what you want. And don't forget to like and review us on iTunes and subscribe to us. And I will see you guys after the show.
Easy flow. Yeah. Like a mountain creek, babbling brook.
That's peaceful,
Easy
man.
Flow.
That's peaceful.
Man, see, I set the tone for the day. That's what I did.
That's pretty good, dude. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know, this is the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. Right now, I got Jason Bircher with me right now. He's kind enough to do an interview, and Jason, I appreciate you being on the show, man.
Oh man, happy to do it. It turned out my calendar freed up. No activity for the day, so it was perfect. You gave me something to do.
Good deal, man. So for our listeners who are not quite familiar with you, could you just give us a real basic rundown, you know, like who you are, what you do, and
sure,
you know, whatever you want to talk about yourself.
Cool. Like you said, I'm Jason Bircher. I'm the primary black belt at Kansas City Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been a black belt for about 9 years now, and I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu for about 20 years. Been fortunate enough to kind of train all over the Midwest, but also, you know, hit spots all over the U.S. I've kept most of my training all domestic, but I've met a lot of really cool people along the way, and I've been able to take what I've learned in training with them and impart little slivers of that knowledge filtered through my kind of weird-ass ways and give it to my people and kind of build a really solid crew. So in that regard, I'm very fortunate.
Excellent. 20 years of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, man, that's kind of dumb.
I mean, I'd like to think the listeners are going to kind of disagree with that, since I don't know if you're listening to this and you're not trained jiu-jitsu, you probably should start so you at least understand most of what we talk about. But like,
sure.
What got you started in it? How'd you like
Man,
just fall into it?
It's kind of the classic tale. It's a Cinderella story, really. You know, young man from the sticks happens upon a grappling club in the back of a community center. That just, you know, by nature of how things were here in the Midwest, I started in Wichita, Kansas, and there really wasn't a formal jiu-jitsu scene. This is like 1998. So it's, you know, it's guys that are getting together and trying to share information. And there was a guy there that was a blue belt that organized things, and he seemed to be a god among men. Like none of us even knew how you got a blue belt. How did this happen? So we were in a little community center with the old fold-out mats, a bunch of kids playing basketball up front. We'd get together and grapple, and early on, everybody kind of had to contribute if you wanted to progress. So, you know, it just happened like that. You know, jiu-jitsu was always appealing to me after I saw the early days of the UFC, and seemed like something that I could do, thinking, oh, that's for the small man, not realizing the voice is still like twice my size. But, you know, got started in that and just fell in love with it from day one, to the point where I would do just about anything I could to train, drive about as far as I needed to, and ensure that I was going to stay on the mats.
Yeah, a lot of people do go to those lengths to keep training, of course. And I know back in the day, everybody talks about being kind of the Wild West. You know, still in my mind, people were talking like, oh, I want to go here and train. I'm like, well, blue belt's really all you need. And I think back, I'm like, wait a second, that was a while back.
Yeah. You know, man, it's really wild to think back as to like each belt and what it represented at the time, because there were just so few of those, particularly in the Midwest. And, you know, you'd see a blue belt, or you'd have a blue belt come and visit, and you we just didn't know what the process was to do that. So from that vantage point, it always seemed like some, like you spotted a unicorn in a sense. And later when you get that next belt, you're still like, oh shit, man, that guy's a purple belt. I can't believe that. This guy must be hardcore. And obviously they'd earned their stripes and their respect, but it was also still pretty wild to think that eventually you're going to do that. And I really don't think that the progression of belts for me like set in until I was a brown belt. And I was like, oh shit, man, based on just this scale, I think eventually I might accidentally be a black belt. This is going to be crazy.
I guess like the old adage is true. Oh, black belt is just a white belt who didn't quit. But
yeah,
there's still something to be said about it. Like, of course, white belts can also not quit, but do you think they can stay shitty, or do you think just if you keep going, even if like maybe just kind of in a knuckleheaded way, like you'll still gain some skill, even if like you try everything against trying to get better?
Sure, man. Even if all of the factors are against you and you're in the hinterlands where there's no one else around except you and a bunch of lumberjacks grappling and you're all white belts, you're still going to get better. That's the one thing that kind of coming up the way I did showed me is it's really about the quality of your training partners and the information you seek. Obviously, someone can come along and refine things for you if they have a more experienced vantage point. They can fine tune some things, but in reality, if you have quality training partners and you guys are at least actively searching to improve rather than just reinforce the bad shit you're already doing, you're going to improve. Nothing really replaces mat time. Occasionally someone will come along and they'll tell you one thing that will revolutionize things. But even to this day, I'll go down a path and I'm working some aspect of my game and I might spend like a year on this thing. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, dude, that was trash. Why wasn't I doing this? And it just reveals itself. So I think, the idea that you necessarily needed a black belt there to push your game to the next level, or even, like a brown belt, something like that, it can be of help to you. That's good guidance. Those guys have experience, but that shouldn't preclude you from training. That shouldn't keep you off the mats. You can train anywhere, truly.
Right. No, and I do agree with that. It is kind of interesting to see just kind of how some groups pop up. And I know something, I guess, that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it's good to have you on the air, especially, being somebody who's had so much experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and has kind of gone from the Wild West days up to now where Jiu-Jitsu, like I always call it the Wild West days. And what's funny was like, I never started like in the 90s. I started like 2005, had like a break and came back. So it was kind of weird coming back and like, there's 3 Jiu-Jitsu academies that I can like just go to.
It's wild, isn't it?
It is. So now that Jiu-Jitsu is kind of a little more readily available, have you seen, or do you feel like we're going to start maybe seeing more, not fake black belts, but people just kind of like, yeah, totally, I'll teach you Jiu-Jitsu, and they have no experience whatsoever teaching Jiu-Jitsu?
I think that's always been there. And it's, one of the things with Jiu-Jitsu that is its own validating point is that you always prove your worth on the mat. So if you're trash and you're teaching trash, eventually it'll come to light. But there are always people teaching that are teaching way above their pay grade. There's guys that have adopted the idea that we're going to teach Jiu-Jitsu. And for a while it went through a weird cycle because it started, guys were teaching Jiu-Jitsu and claiming to have a pedigree they didn't. And that was when you saw a lot of like really heavy rivalries in cities. I mean, we even had it in Wichita. And there was like three places that were training what they called Jiu-Jitsu. And we thought we were the champions of the art and needed to go and challenge guys and have matches with those guys. Yeah. It wasn't so much like the old school dojo storm. So as it was like, well, let's just go train and see what happens. And, those were interesting times because it was proven quickly who was following like the tenets of it and actually putting in the time to work and who was just kind of making shit up as they went along. But you're going to have that in every era and in every available market. There's still guys to this day that get found out. And I'm kind of against it. There was that whole rash of like blue belt, purple belt dudes that were going to academies and throwing down the gauntlet and telling guys they shouldn't wear black belts. And that's not on them. Yeah. They really, I get the idea of it. I understand the passion for jiu-jitsu and you feel like you need to do that. But the reality is, if your instructor is bothered by that, let your instructor deal with that. Maybe bring it to light to him, but it's not really on you to go and boot stomp some dude because he's teaching the wrong stuff. Let his guys figure it out, introduce them to good jiu-jitsu, be a positive ambassador of it rather than feeling like you got to go and throw down and basically make yourself look like a bully in that regard. And, I've definitely had conversations with people and I'm not saying that I've been innocent of it. I've been to like tournaments and guys show up and they claim they do jiu-jitsu. Like back in the day when all the tournaments were in the back corner of a karate tournament. And you just put it down on those guys and you showed them what real jiu-jitsu was all about, or at least the jiu-jitsu that we could express at the time. I mean, now it's like super primitive to look back and think, man, I thought I had some skills. I'm like, oh, I'd be embarrassed of me. But, you know, those are the starting phases of it. Nowadays, I think, you know, there's so much information out there. It's not like the old shared videotape days and the book days, and maybe you got a chance to go to a seminar somewhere. Everybody can pick some information up off YouTube and kind of teach it. But if they don't really understand what's happening, you're almost just programming the bad aspects of the technique. And again, I feel like on the mats, everything is eventually proven. You know, I have guys that come in all the time and maybe they don't train at those places now, but they've trained at them before, and they come in and they feel like they've got a little leg up because they got a little mat time, and they're quickly shown what, you know, I'm not saying we got the purest jiu-jitsu, but I definitely have confidence in my guys to express it a little closer to what it should be. And they're educated real quick, not in like an asshole kind of fashion. It's just, you know, the first time you get in the deep end of the pool and you're like, shit, I can't touch, man. You know, I thought I could swim and now I can't touch and I'm panicking a little. And it actually tends to open people's eyes more than it is like a, you know, like a bully beatdown kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is I at least personally, I haven't really experienced many like people coming in and getting their asses beat because they're like, oh yeah, I did this, this, and this. We had a gentleman come in. He showed up to class. He was wearing his karate uniform with his black belt on.
Yes.
I'm like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, we do gi jiu-jitsu. He came up. He's like, hey, check it out. I do, you know, such and such. I can't remember the name of it because there's way too many syllables for me to like pronounce. And he's like, and we do focus a lot on grappling as well. I'm like, all right, man, that's awesome. You know, I'm not gonna be like, take that shit off. You like, he earned it in his own way. But I'm like, let's get on the mat, man. And tried to help him. He didn't come back, unfortunately, because I thought it would be actually pretty badass. And he was an older dude, so I'd be like, yeah, man, we got this guy. He's a karate guy or whatever, and you know, he showed up with a black belt and he wants to train, but he never came back, so it kind of bummed me out.
Yeah, the hard part with that shit is it's like the older the guy gets, the more entrenched he gets, not just in what he does, but his mythology about what he does, you know, where he thinks he stands in the pecking order of life. And for most people, that's the hardest part of jiu-jitsu is realizing you don't know shit and somebody's going to hand it to you, and it's never the dude that you expect. But once you understand that, training is always productive, you know? So when guys come from, I don't want to say they're theoretical martial arts, but the less direct applied martial arts, you know, the things that you don't have the option to spar hard every day. You don't have the ability to refine it in the forge every day. And the further those guys get away from like the hard sparring, the less they want to do that. So you've got this concept of what you can do. And then you walk in and all of a sudden, man, you're just in the Shark Tank. And it's a blow to the ego. It's almost better when a guy comes in and he admits he doesn't know shit and he gets tooled up and he realizes how much fun that is and how much more he can learn. And then he's never worried about that. The pressure's gone. But I've seen plenty of guys over the years that came in and they had a really certain sense about themselves. And it's almost like certainty is your undoing, you know. That's the one way to make sure that you have a really bad night is to be absolutely sure of your capacity.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, you know, the way you take yourself, like you say, the pecking order, the way you bring yourself into martial arts. Like, you know, for the longest time, I was like, nah, man, I wrestled a little bit in high school and I did Taekwondo. I'm practically the deadliest man alive at this point. And,
I'm untouchable, man.
Yeah, like, nobody can beat my ass whatsoever. And
yeah,
you know, I'm very, very fortunate that I wasn't like, oh yeah, you know, let's find out who the tough guy is, and because I had a jiu-jitsu person say, no, let's see, like, you know, I'll come to class and we'll see how good you are, and you know, they really opened my eyes to like, oh shit, you know, if I'm on my back, even with wrestling, like I'm fucked. I'm fucked pretty hard.
I'm stuck. Yeah, turtle on the shell, man.
Yep. So
turtle on the shell.
So now we talk about people with their ego. You know, it's hard to overcome it. And I know something that I've heard kind of from students, from other practitioners, you know, other people I listen to as well. The more available we have, the more jiu-jitsu is available for us to use or take and whatnot. You know, it opens doors up for a lot of people. Do you think, or based on your experience, do you see the douchebag filter, some people like to call it, failing a little bit because we seem to start having more egos, more assholes, or whatever you want to call it, kind of showing up in the community?
Man, it's kind of weird because there's definitely like there's a marketability element to it now, but I think that's more of a reflection of just that accessibility to put your persona online.
Yeah.
Like back in the day when I started, it was such a dingy little dirty secret, and I don't necessarily look back on those days like those were the golden times. It friggin' sucked, man. It's like you're gonna go and train, and luckily like 6 dudes would show up, and you beat the shit out of each other with no timer for like 2 hours, and you wish that the club would grow so you could have more training partners and maybe afford rent somewhere and not be in the back corner of some shithole. But those were important times. Obviously, you needed that to build it up. But in a lot of ways, man, I don't lament the fact that we have this success. The only thing that comes along with it is you're going to have, of course you're going to have fevered egos. You've got a limited feeding pool for people to try to make their name with it and get whatever they're trying to get out of it. I look at jiu-jitsu very specifically as having 2 motivations. When some guys, their motivations switch for the better, sometimes they're for the worse. But the reality is, are you doing it for internal purposes where you really find the gratification in the challenge and it makes you a better person? Or are you doing it for external values where you want that pat on the back and you want to be the guy that's like, you're not even on magazines anymore because there's like 2 magazines for jiu-jitsu and the publication rate sucks. But you know what I mean? Like you have that online presence, you got as many Instagram followers as like all the booty chicks on online. But the funny thing about that shit is, it's such an affectation, because when you get to know most of those guys, they're just dudes in the gym and they're training, and somebody somewhere told them that you got to be like the old school WWE heels to get any attention. And you're like, man, ultimately just jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. You can have fun with it. You can joke around. I'll talk shit to my friends before we have matches if we're doing like super fight matches or something, but it's all to entertain more ourselves than anybody else. If somebody happens to follow along with it, then they're like, what are these guys talking about? But the real point is, just have fun with it, man. I know a lot of guys get super caught up in the idea that people are selling themselves or their rivalries. Dude, I don't give a shit. Like, do what you got to do. If that's your personality and that's the way you need to get attention, cool. But the reality is you still have to prove your worth on the mats. It's like the whole idea of guys just striving and wanting to get sponsors, and then they list their sponsors like they achieved something. And in the end, man, most of the guys I know that got sponsors, it's cool that you're supporting your friends, and you need to support your friends. That's really what it boils down to for me. If I have like any kind of sponsorship, I want to look at it as maybe we can mutually benefit each other and get your products out there and get more people to come into the academy. But it's not about like the ego stroke of saying I'm a sponsored athlete. I don't give a shit about that, dude. I went my entire jiu-jitsu career until the last year and having any kind of like gi sponsorship. And I was super fortunate to have that, but that all came from like, not only having kind of a presence in the community, but having really good friends who recognized me for it.
Yeah.
But I think most of this stuff is just guys trying to maybe have a persona within the sport and stand out. And that's cool and all, but in the end, you still got to do jiu-jitsu,
Yeah, and that was actually like the next thing I was going to talk about was because I was thinking like, oh yeah, we can talk about sponsorship, and you brought it up. The focus, I guess, maybe not even so much the douchebag side of the house. Now we're going like on the opposite end where it's kind of, like you said, everybody wants a little pat on the back or, list their sponsors. Like, I've seen people losing focus. Like, did you do jiu-jitsu, like you said, either for internal or external purposes? Did you do jiu-jitsu to get a sponsorship, or did you do it because it's fun?
Yeah, right. And in the end, that's the whole reason you got to do it. I know I've seen plenty of guys over the time, and I've even gone through this whole psychological thing, because for me, it's like when I started jiu-jitsu, I didn't even know you could do like a jiu-jitsu competition. I just thought you had to fight, or it was for self-defense. And then later I found out, shit, man, we can do like gi and no-gi competitions. This is great. So in that regard, like you kind of learn through the hard aspects of it, what it means to do it, but you also have to develop an idea of how the hell do I even compete? Like, what does it mean to compete? So you go through the entire psychological range of, all right, I got to get amped up. This is a fight. And then you're too hyped up. Then you get the adrenaline dump. Then you're like, man, I got to calm down for my next competition. This isn't really a fight. This is still a sport. Then you're so zenned out that you just like, I don't give a shit what happens, man. You walk up the mat like, what was I doing? So you go through this entire psychological range and every available nuance within that to figure out how to compete. And it really just kind of helps to later define what you're doing on the mat. So I sort of feel like, you know, the more there's the availability of not just quality training partners and bigger academies and more people to train with, but more tournaments, more experience across the board, the more everybody's just kind of held to a high standard. Their behavior is sort of regulated by the environment, and everybody's just cool as shit, man. That's the coolest thing about jiu-jitsu is you can walk into any academy and you've got like a ready-made set of weird-ass friends that are into the same stuff you are. And for the most part, everybody's going to be cool with you. There might be one dude that's like super hyped up and maybe he like wrote his test cycle too long or something. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what his problem is, but everybody in that gym knows he's like that too, you know? So they're going to kind of give you warning or at least give you the side eye when you go with that dude and you'll be able to tell. But for the most part, man, everybody's going to be way cool, which I think is probably the biggest appealing factor of it is you're not walking really into a lion's den anywhere. You're walking into a place where people are happy you're there. Yeah,
because the more people you get trained with, because a lot of the people are just very accepting, like you say, and you know, of course, like we also talked about, there's gonna be maybe one or two assholes there, but usually they, you know, everybody, like you said, everybody knows who they are.
Yeah.
With that type of thing, do you feel also, you know, being a black belt yourself, being somebody who's an instructor, you set the, I guess, like the environment or the presence or the attitude of the academy at that point?
Yeah. The academy, especially if you're like the primary instructor, you own the academy. It's by and large just an expression of your philosophy on jiu-jitsu and your instructors that you share the mat with, the guys that come up with you, you know, your ongoing training partners, and then everybody that comes up underneath that, they're going to have an aspect of that imprinted upon them and how they train. And, you know, I'm the first to say, like, not every academy is for everybody. Somebody comes in and checks out my spot, and I'm like, dude, you have to understand, like, my guys will train hard, they'll get after it, but we're going to joke around. I'm not super formal. I talk like mad shit the whole time I'm teaching. We joke around, but the reality is, like, I want these guys to come in and feel like this is the one place on earth that they can be their most honest, that everything from the outside, all of those restrictions and precursors about their life are gone long enough that they can come in and just like truly be themselves on the mat. And it's a release in that regard. There's no obligation aspect to it. You're never going to be like driving to the gym like, shit, man, I better get my money's worth today because I paid for it this month and I haven't been in enough. I feel like everybody feels worse when they don't come in. And that's the best environment for me because that's just how I live. I'm just basically full of shit constantly. So it's great I have a place where I don't have to answer to anyone while I do it.
Yeah, it is pretty cool to have that place where you just unwind and kind of have that social aspect as well. Like,
yeah, man.
I had to explain to my wife, you know, my wife doesn't really get it, and that's understandable.
Sure.
It's a hobby of dudes and funny looking pajamas and bathrobes trying to choke each other unconscious and, you know, learn how to break other people's arms. So, like,
right.
Everybody, I do believe jiu-jitsu can be enjoyed by everybody, but not everybody's gonna like look at it and go, yeah, let's fucking do that. That's a great idea. Like, that seems like
not everybody's gonna carry that obsession. Definitely not naturally, you know. But the people that do, it's like an inseparable part of them. Actually, when I have people that contact me about training, I tell them all the time, you know, you can get good technique at many academies, but you need to find that community that clicks with you because there's something that's almost primal and very tribal about the gym that you find that works best for you. And you're going to feel like, I tell people all the time, you have to understand that there's a cautionary tale involved in that as well, because you're going to come in there and you're going to immediately feel like, okay, I need to let go of every other thing in my life and quit my job and live on these mats. And you see it constantly, man. And I tell people, like, pace yourself with this.
Yeah.
And you'll find your place in the community, but you can't just walk in the door and, you know, put on the tribal guard and go on a field hunt with everybody. You got to take your time and ease into it and really, you know, find that place that clicks for you. I don't care if it's with me or, you know, the academies around the city. I'll see you guys, you know, in plenty of training opportunities at tournaments and stuff. I'm cool with everybody, man. I like to keep it open. I'm not about like, snatching students up or trying to keep people from other places. I just want people to train jiu-jitsu, man. So find the spot that works for you.
Yeah, and that is something I feel is like very important, especially you're talking about like having the gyms readily available to you. Maybe it is the old school mentality of, like, oh, you're going to go train to another place, fuck you, you're a traitor, all this other bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, there's still some of that in the community, though. Like, do you see that getting weeded out completely, or do you think kind of it'll always have like this? There's still going to be some of it, just a tiny bit, maybe. Like, I don't see it as often.
There'll always be a tiny bit, yeah. There's always going to be a tiny bit, only because people are so allegiant to their own academies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, their academy is their home. They live and breathe and bleed in that place. So of course you're very prideful about where you train, and I understand that. I'm very into my club. When my guys are there, they're my guys. I'm ride or die with those guys. But I also have so many friends at other academies. And here's the crazy thing about it is, I look back at like the whole criança concept and the idea that you're not supposed to go and train with other people. And the reality is it's rooted in the idea that the schools in Brazil were truly like neighborhood-based schools. You know what I mean? You didn't travel across town to go train at some other place back in the day. You trained where your neighborhood was. And so it created that idea that your neighborhood, in a sense, your neighborhood gym was like, gangland, man. It was your territory. You had to protect that shit. And so when it came to the States, I saw a lot of guys really adopt to this idea that they were part of that. And it cracked me up because it was just like when, I met my first Crip in 8th grade, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You're a Crip, man. You're not even from California. You're like in Wichita, Kansas, at the middle school here. And so I had all these guys that I knew later on that were like, oh, man, Gracie Baja, ride or die. And it's like, yeah, but you're not from fucking Baja, man. You're from, like Moberly, Missouri or some shit like that. Like, you can't really adhere to those tenets, man. You can't go to war with dudes in your own town that are from another affiliated gym. But some of that was just, that just bled over, and people thought you had to be like that. And so I think in a way, like being able to travel around early on with it, I realized, you just train with who you train with, and you're going to eventually, on a long enough timeline, train with everybody anyway or compete against everybody anyway. That was one thing, like when I moved to Kansas City, like 13 years ago, one of the main reasons I moved here was there was a black belt instructor that lived here. There had been two, and they had two separate academies. And of course there were the natural rivalries there. The unfortunate thing was those rivalries came from the division within one core central group that was already kind of training together, but guys went to different schools. Yeah. The rivalries built up. It was just kind of like, I have this patch and now I can't be your friend kind of thing. And it's okay, man. I understood it. But when I moved here, I was like, shit, man, this is the first time I'm ever going to have like a real black belt instructor. This is going to be awesome. I can finally just be purely a student. Yeah. And the dude moved like 2 weeks after that. So we were back to square one. So in a way, like, there was already established black belt clubs here before I came along. And at that time I was a purple belt. So, we just kind of had to rebuild from the remnants of that. And I think in a big way, me being from the outside helped to kind of get people over those dividing lines that were there. It's not like I did some grand unifying thing. I didn't like bridge the gap between, facets of the city or bring the gangs together. It was just, we all just found one place to train, and it was easier to go there because, there's a dude there that is helping to teach who doesn't know any of that shit. So let's just go and train.
Yeah, and it always works out. Well, it usually does too. It usually works out. I do find it funny because, like you talk about the whole, yeah, in some senses maybe if it was like an infight in a school and you guys split up, I kind of get it. But the fact, like, I've got, just like every other BJJ practitioner out there, I've got jiu-jitsu shirts. Like, I do. Yeah. From different schools, different academies. I've got Helson Gracie shirts. I've got Team Alliance. Like, it doesn't even really matter. But the thing was, like, I do remember at one point having an Alliance shirt on and somebody going, you're lucky, blah, 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 blah. You shouldn't even be wearing that in this academy. I'm like, what do you mean, man? He's like, we hate Alliance. I'm like, well, what? They like fuck your mom or something? Like, what the fuck happened?
Right,
like,
dude. They kill your dog when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Fabio Gurgel came out of nowhere and killed your dog, man. What the fuck?
Yeah. To me, like, to get to that level, it's borderline like people having almost fist fights over like, oh, what's better, Xbox, PlayStation, or PC?
Yeah, dude.
Who the fuck cares? Like, we play the same video games.
No, I mean, and here's the thing is like at tournaments, obviously there are going to be those rivalries, the bigger tournaments, it's teams trying to get team trophies, but it doesn't erupt into like soccer hoodlum battles,
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's really going to be like, oh man, it's not going to be West Side Story and freaking Alianza guys are walking down the lane, snapping their fingers, and around the corner comes the Baja guys and everybody better look out. It's just, you got your team. You're trying to get your points. I'm on this team. I'm trying to get my points. I see you. We're friends, man. Who gives a shit? Like, that's your team. Cool, right? But we're still going to be friends. If I see you at the bar, you need to buy me a beer because I'm a poor jiu-jitsu instructor from the Midwest, and you're the big successful guy on the coast. But I'll appreciate that beer and I'll drink it with you.
Yeah, it's all about being friends. Like, I can't think of any tournaments except for maybe one where, like, everybody, like, we all were laughing and joking about the matches afterwards. Just had one guy with a piss poor attitude, but whatever. That's one in a million out there at this point. So,
man, back in the day, you would go to tournaments and you'd have guys that would really get way too fucking heated. And, they'd lose their shit and their coaches are losing their shit. And you still see some of it, especially from, like, the coaching standpoint, guys getting way out of whack and too worked up. But the competitors are always cool with each other, man.
Yeah. They like you said, they usually are. I'll take it back. There is one group of people who usually do get a little crazy, and that seems to be spectators who don't train.
Oh, yeah. Those assholes.
God almighty.
Yeah. It's not as bad at jiu-jitsu tournaments as it is at fights, though, man. If you have to go to very many, like, MMA events, especially like the local ones, you'll just want to, I don't know if you'll want to kill yourself or kill them or kill everybody involved. It's just so terrible. And it never stops. It's been the same way since the beginning of MMA in the States that I've been involved in. It's always the same shit and the same people. About the only thing that changes is which NASCAR driver they have on their T-shirt. Because beyond that, it's just like, oh my God, these people are still alive. Like, they still don't know anything about the sport they're watching incessantly.
But yet they have every right in the world to make comments about it and talk about how they would do it differently if it was them in the ring. And
oh yeah, they're the best coaches with no experience. That's for sure.
That's right. It drives me up the wall. That pretty much is why I have that, like, it's a little flexible depending upon, like, where I am and what's going on. But I will not watch any MMA in, like, Hooters or Buffalo Wild Wings or anything, because
right.
Like, I'm amazed at how many martial arts masters and coaches are out there, especially when it comes down to watching the UFC, and I'm trying to eat some wings and have a beer, and I'm getting told, like, oh, they need to do this, this, and this. That's probably the smartest thing. Oh, what's your experience? Well, like, I fought a lot in the street. Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, right.
Fuck.
And what street was this? What grade was that? Second grade? You got in 2 fights? Oh man, you're practically a pro.
Yeah. Although those people, they do come into the gym every so often, which does make it a little entertaining.
I just get those guys that come in and they want to tell me about, some karate guy they trained with back in '89. Yeah. Who is, every last one of the guys that they ever trained with somehow is like 6 degrees of separation from Danny Inosanto, And that dude is rad, but they're always like, yeah, I trained with old Larry Johnson out there and Ray Moore, and he trained under, Stevie Jackson down in Springfield, and, that guy trained with Danny Inosanto back in, and it's like, I don't fucking know who you're talking about, dude. Like, you're talking about, you might as well come up to me and start talking about, like, motocross racing for all I know about the shit you're talking about.
Yeah, and it is pretty, that is dead on, too. Like, I was under Sensei James Kalp and blah, 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 and he was a student under so-and-so who was one of Danny Inosanto's first black belts in the United States. And
like, it's like, Danny Inosanto's rad, man. I'd love to meet him and stuff, too, but I don't care about some guy that trained with him in '78 that hasn't done shit since then. It's got nothing to do with what I'm doing, man.
We used to do this stuff, and it would be, I was like, okay, that's, like, I'll entertain it, because, I'm trying not to be an asshole about it.
Amused, yeah. That son of a bitch, he could kick your hat right off your head. Oh, sweet. Neat. That's cool.
How many fights has he won?
Yeah. Not even that, but like, where is he now? Oh, he's a career alcoholic, and
Oh, geez.
drives a dump truck or something. You know, it's like those guys aren't doing shit. They haven't done shit in decades, man.
Yeah, like or so you've got the spectators. That's the thing. Do you have a kids program at your gym?
Yeah, actually, so I'm really fortunate that my adult program carries the club, and I didn't start a kids program until my kids were old enough to train, and I very selfishly wanted them to have training partners.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just organically grown, man. It's really cool because it's like the kids program is just like the adult program. I thought it would primarily be a neighborhood thing, and we draw people in from around the immediate area of the school. But I still get guys that some of them train with me and they bring their kids. Other people, they hear about the reputation of the club, or they've seen my kids compete, and they bring their kids from all over the city. So it's super rad that like they're willing to dedicate in that regard too. And it's just grown and grown. We have a pretty solid group of dedicated, our core kids. They go through that exact phase that I feel like all of them wind up going through. If they're super serious about jiu-jitsu, they come, they're there for like 1 day a week, then 2 days a week, then they start quitting all the other bullshit sports they're doing, and they want to be there all the time. And I get to watch these kids kind of grow up through jiu-jitsu, and it's cool because we're starting to get kids now that they started in the youth program and now they're in the adult program.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, man, it's wild to watch because it was also like, I just want my kids to have somebody to train with. And now I've got like dedicated monsters.
No, that is awesome. Like in a sick way, I'm kind of right there with you. That's why I started the club out here. I'm like, I want regular training partners. Like, what can I do to do that? And it just
for sure
kind of went on its own way. But since you do have a pretty solid a kids program, and I guess we were talking about the spectators of the sport. I know the parents of kids can be a little wild sometimes.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
Like any advice, like maybe some people are gonna, listen to this and hopefully maybe hits home or whatever if they need to hear it. But like, what's some advice you can give to the parents of competitors who don't train themselves? Like, what's something you'd want them to
One
hear?
thing that I really try to define for all of the parents is, I am the kid's primary coach, and I have assistant coaches that help with that. And when it comes to not just competition, but training as well, we don't like sideline coaching.
Yeah.
It just becomes too much of a distraction. You're automatically going to be too emotionally involved in what your kids do, but also it distracts and removes their focus away from where they need to be. And those kids very much so need to be on the mat and listening to what the coaches say. I'm adamant against that like screaming, cacophonous, like out of control coaching style that I still see to this day, where it's like, dude, I'm not gonna yell over you to coach my kid. So I'm really big on finding a way to find out that kind of commanding tone and project your voice, but stay in a very conversational pattern with the kids, because you don't want to freak them out, man. You don't need to crank up their anxiety, and it's going to happen too if their parents are coaching them. So there are a couple things that I'm really big on. One is, our dedicated coaches will coach those kids. They spend time with those kids. They know those kids' games. Also, like in competition, when our kids meet up in any part of the bracket, whether it be early on or in the finals, ideally, they need to go at it, but nobody coaches them.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody coach against the kids in our club. The parents can't coach their own kids. It's those two kids out there, and they're pushing each other. And I tell them flat out, I'm like, give each other the hardest match of the day. But I think that helps to define the idea that, one, they are a team, and two, we do have like for lack of a better concept, like a professional staff dedicated to coaching them. These guys are studying your kid's game. They're helping them learn the game that is part of the program. And they're going to know best how to get them to the point of success without having to get emotional about it like parents invariably do.
Yeah, and they do. And I think those are some really great rules, because I've seen some pretty wild parents get involved in their
parents lose their shit. Yeah.
Oh my God, man.
And it irritates the hell out of me, because I watch that shit and I'm just like, dude, you're not helping this kid out at all. You're fucking this kid up because you're screaming at him. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So you're just throwing out terms that you maybe heard in class or your kid mentioned to you. They're way out of position for that shit. They're so worried about disappointing you now. that they're like losing their mind. I see kids all the time, like at tournaments, they'd be fine if people would quit screaming incomprehensible shit at them. They'd do great. But it's just like, man, if you're trying to do your job and I'm just sitting there screaming in your face, you're going to fuck it up. So you better hope your job isn't something important or something that's going to get you hurt. So why are you going to turn around and do that to some kid that really, in the end, is just doing jiu-jitsu for fun, man? You know, they don't give a shit about, like, getting sponsorships, getting in a magazine, getting, some kind of accolade. The only accolade they want is for you to be proud of them doing it and their friends to high-five them afterwards. You know, that's their motivation.
Yeah, that is something I've also seen too, talking about like sponsorships and stuff. Like we'll occasionally still get messages on either Instagram or on the Facebook page, like parents wanting their kids to come on the show.
Yeah.
I'm like, have you?
For what?
I was like, have you listened to our show? Like,
I don't know, but have you ever tried to have an actual conversation with a kid, then put them in an interview format?
Yeah, it's not going to work out
well.
well.
It's going to be like, one time in Minecraft, I built a dojo, and who gives a shit, kid? Like, I like you and all, but I don't want to hear about that, man. And you're not going to be able to really follow the format of a podcast, man.
Yeah, and
parents are crazy, dude.
Yeah, I know, and I can bitch about all, like, it's cool they want to give the exposure, but at the same time, I feel like if you're going to take something that's fun, right? The kid enjoys it. It even goes for adults as well. You talk about people are like, I've done 1 week and I know what I'm doing. I already put in my 2 weeks notice, sold my car, and I will be doing.
I'm a professional.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more that goes into that than just doing it full time. But it's at the end of the day, you'll hate it. I feel like truly,
oh shit, yeah.
If like you said, you don't go on the hunt with a tribe on the first week.
Yeah, you're gonna be bad breath on a hyena. You do that, you're gonna fuck up your whole life, man.
Yeah.
But the one thing that having a kids program in particular has taught me, is understanding that you can't imprint your enthusiasm for it on any of the kids, and more particularly your own. I have to give my kids space with it because I want them to be there all the time. I want them to train all the time. But the reality is they're going to hate it if I do that. By the time they're actually teenagers and able to throw down on the mats properly, now we're just programming them. But when they get to the point where they have some, like some adult size to them and can do some really cool shit on the mats, they're going to hate it so much they're never going to want to do it again. Then I'll be really disappointed. So I give them space while I can, and I tell all the parents to do the same. I'd love for all the kids in the program, because they're all just friggin' awesome. I'd love for them all to be there every time. But man, if your kid needs a break, give your kid a break. Shit, there's no scholarships in jiu-jitsu.
Nah, hell no. I mean, there's for competing, there's barely enough money for, like, unless you are super duper high level.
Yeah,
like ridiculous.
Shit, dude. Even that, I don't know how those guys get by in some of these cities, man. Because I'm like, only within the last couple of years has my gym proven to be like not just sustainable, but an actual job. Because before that, I was in the red every time I left the house to teach, but I didn't do it for that. I never thought, man, okay, I'm going to be an instructor and I'm going to do jiu-jitsu. It was more to the effect of, I want to do jiu-jitsu and nobody's fucking teaching, so I better show something. And then you're kind of like, I guess I'm teaching all the time. And you're kind of like, oh shit, like we're going to have to pay rent somewhere at some point. I better figure out how we do that. How the hell do I get everybody to pay consistently? Luckily, you never have to chase anybody around. But shit, man, the responsibilities grow, and next thing you know, you actually have a business card that says you're an instructor. And you're like, how the fuck did this happen? I just started training in the back room of some janky ass community center. That's all I wanted to do, and it's not begrudging. It's just friggin' awesome. But it's also like, there's no plan here. I just, like I said, I was too dumb to quit. I was just the dude that was there all the time. So here I am.
Yeah. And it does work out that way. And I think a lot of people romanticize the idea of a gym, of like kids being, oh yes, I'm super passionate about it as well too, dad or mom or whatever, and having a partner in life or whoever, someone you love that you want to be with, who's also like a multiple time Pan American champ or whatever, it's just like, that is super rare. And I will tell you, like, at least me, I'm not fucking living it, because I can barely come home and at least try to hug my wife after class, where she's like, nah,
they don't want to have any piece of you when you're all funky, man.
Hell no.
Sure. And you can't really like get them to understand that. You can try it all ways. You can imagine, you can have a PowerPoint presentation, you can have like all the Febreze in your car that you want. Let her pick the smell for the day. But yeah, nobody's going to enjoy that nut funk when you come home. That's for sure. I mean, shit, I don't want to smell like that. I don't want to sit down in my own stew. The shit'll hit you hard and you can't eat. So you better get cleaned up.
Oh yeah.
No, it's a weird, very specific obsession, man. And it's super hard to, not even just like live cohesively with, but then to explain to people in any way, shape or form, you know. People ask me all the time, like, how long can you do jiu-jitsu? Like, I'm 43 now, which isn't that old, but, you know, it takes a toll on you. But I'm very fortunate that I've been durable enough to continue doing it. And that's not, you know, I know guys that are way older than me that are still doing it daily and are still monsters on the mat. And it's like, there's no end point to jiu-jitsu. That's the thing, you know. My black belt wasn't the capper. And then it's like, all right, time to go do something else. I wonder what tennis is like, you know. Yeah. You know, the grand design is just to friggin' die on the mats one day. Just have them come scoop me up and put me in the dumpster and, you know, give me a little Viking funeral and set that bitch on fire and then go back and train. Guys, get back in there, get on the mats, you know. My daughter, she's 7, and since she's like 4, she just told everybody that when she's 15, she's going to take over the school. And I was like, well, you know, what can I do? And she just told me I could still come. And then just this past summer, that changed from when she's 15 to when my dad dies, I'm going to take over the school. And I'm kind of like, are you telling me I'm going to die when you're 15, or that you've pushed the timeline back? Because I'm not really sure where this shit's going. But at least somebody has a plan.
Yeah, hey, you know, there's a backup plan. That's all you need, right?
I guess.
I mean, you know, who knows what could happen tomorrow? And then you got a 7-year-old running class. Like, hey, we got to put the black belt on you. Sorry. That's
it. Well, she can be her little yellow belts off and still running class. I'm sure she'd do just fine. The people would listen to her. She's got that fire in her eyes. She's a little commanding. So
awesome. Well, hey, you know, it's like you said, good plan to have. Somebody's already planning for you.
Yeah, you gotta have, you know, the assistant manager in line should the manager fail in his duties. I think that's how it works. Or is that Miss America? That's Miss America. There it is.
Is that the thing? Like, the runner-up has to be ready to be Miss America in case she like goes on like a coke binge or something.
Coke binge, or like a bunch of, you know, nudie pictures show up with her or something like that. I don't think anybody gives a shit anymore. They still do Miss America, but I think all of like 14 people watch it.
Yeah, like I honestly can't remember when it's made news recently. Like, oh yeah, fuck it, nobody gives a shit. Like,
right.
I bet there
but
is
then
somebody.
Again, they could say the same shit about our jiu-jitsu stuff too. So
yeah, that's true.
We can't get too high on our horse about that. We'll be like, yeah, but man, did you watch, you know, Abu Dhabi? And they're like, fuck you, get out of here, man. Nobody cares about that.
Yeah, although like my mind's stuck now on this one person, like, who probably at one point this year has had a conversation about being appalled at the, you know, the shenanigans that Miss America undertook, and that they should go ahead and just relieve her of whatever title. Like, that has happened.
Oh yeah, that's what's crazy, man. Yeah. It's just weird because, you know, obviously we're in great, like, tumultuous transitional times, but certain things have still kind of held on in people's psyche as maybe being an indicator or having some cultural importance. And it's like, of all things, that shit still has like some relevance to people. Like, who cares, man? Find something else to do.
She's really good at twirling a baton, and the bathing suit round got her points. Cool. Like, yeah, that's still a thing going. We put people on the fucking moon. But,
well, we haven't done that in a very long time, but we have a Miss America every year. So
that's right.
That kind of shows our priorities.
Fuck. Man, that's depressing. So, Jason, before we end this, ended on such a really awesome high note thinking about Miss America pageants.
Well, we had to end on those high levels, man. We had to hit the hard topics, the topics everybody else was afraid to hit, man. We went deep with it.
We asked the hard questions about Miss America on this podcast.
Like you asked me in the beginning, is there anything that I won't, you know, that I don't want to talk about? And like I said, man, I'll talk about anything. I'll go to those depths.
and we did go there. No, I thought it was.
We truly did.
It was good. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to? Sponsors, people back home, anybody, like, you know, floor is yours. Talk about whoever you want to.
Yeah, for sure, man. I should give a shout out to my sponsors only because I've been really fortunate to gather some really cool people that have helped me out. First of all, Fuji is a fantastic sponsor of mine. their gear is always, high quality, but the coolest thing is they always have shit in stock. So that's pretty cool. Renaissance Periodization, they help program like my nutrition programs and my workout programs. And it's helped me a lot in the last year and a half. I've been really consistent with that and seen some super positive gains. I figure if I'm going to be an old man, I need to gain my old man strength. My buddy James with Trap and Roll Soap Company, he does really cool stuff, man. And he's got a great team going on and really good products. And then, my family with KCBJJ, man, I couldn't do any of this without them there. It's really sad and lonely trying to do jiu-jitsu by yourself and have not just a good team, but one hell of a dedicated family, people that are there for each other, through thick and thin, man. So I'm super fortunate in that regard to have that available to me.
Awesome. Yeah. James obviously hooks us up with some sweet soap and stuff as well. So
yeah, he's a super cool dude, man.
Yeah. Love it. He's a good guy. So, Jason, I really do appreciate you coming on the show today.
Oh, of course. Anytime.
And,
anytime. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cause it's topics I like to talk about, like hitting the stuff, talking about, weird people in jiu-jitsu and parents and stuff like that. So, it's, it's definitely a pleasure. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.